Welcome to this meeting of the Armidale Regional Council of the 3rd of November. As Interim Administrator of the Armidale Region, I declare that I will undertake my duties of the office of Interim Administrator in the best interests of the community and faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me to the best of my skill and judgment. Recognition of traditional owners. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Armidale Regional Community pays tribute to their love of land, love of people and love of culture. There's no apologies and no disclosures of interest that I'm aware of, Mr. General Manager. No public forum. There is one interim administrator minute, appointment of a General Manager. The Office of Local Government has issued guidelines for the appointment and oversight of General Managers, which must be taken into account in any recruitment process, and as is my statutory obligation, these have been followed. LG New South Wales Management Solutions was engaged by Council to assist in the recruitment of a General Manager. As part of the process, separate community and staff forums were conducted to define the qualities expected of the General Manager for Armidale Regional Council, and attached to this minute is a précis of the outcomes prepared by LG New South Wales. All persons who were invited to attend the community forum were invited to put themselves forward for selection in the final interview process, and 15 expressions were received. Ms. Bronwyn Pearson and Mr. Grant McCarroll were selected by me to participate. 25 applications were received, and a short list of 3 candidates who met the above criteria and who had experience in rebuilding local government organisations were selected for interview. The interviews were facilitated by LG New South Wales Management Solutions representative, with the panel comprising of the Acting General Manager, the 2 community members and myself, and were held on Friday 30 November. The calibre of the applicants was very high, and the panel was unanimous in its decision to recommend Mr. James Ronkin. Mr. Ronkin is presently the General Manager of Broken Hill City Council. The total remuneration package is $350,000, which includes superannuation and a vehicle, with a 5-year performance-based contract. Should the first annual performance review be assessed as more than satisfactory, Council will increase the remuneration package to $360,000. As is the norm in recruiting senior staff, Council will meet the removal expenses up to $10,000. 50% will be payable at the time of the move, and the remaining 50% on the completion of 12 months satisfactory service. Mr. Ronkin has indicated he will commence duties on 11 January 2021, and Mr. Rayner has agreed to stay on the acting role until that time, for which I am most appreciative. While Mr. Ronkin will be the General Manager from 11 January, there will be a handover period of approximately 1 week in view of the complexities of the Armidale Regional Council's present position. LG New South Wales will now prepare, in line with the guidelines issued by the Office of Local Government, the model contract for signature. The contract requires that the employee and council sign a performance agreement setting out agreed performance criteria, and I've asked LG New South Wales, Mr. Ronkin and the Acting General Manager to ensure this document is submitted to the December Council meeting. Accordingly, I move A, that Mr. James Ronkin be appointed to the position of General Manager on a 5-year performance-based contract subject to final negotiations and required checks being satisfactorily completed. B, that Ms Pearson and Mr McCarroll be thanked for giving so freely of their time and expertise in the process. I declare that carried. There are other matters that the Acting General Manager has asked that I deal with at this meeting, and pursuant to clause 9.3 of the Code of Meeting Practice, I move that items 6.1 Bushfire Community Recovery and Resilience Fund Phase 2, item 7.1 Waterfall Way Guardrail Installation and Repair Contract, item 7.2 Minutes Extraordinary Traffic Advisory Committee meeting on the 29th of October, and item 8.1 Guyra Early Education Centre be considered at this meeting, and I rule them to be of great urgency. Mr Acting General Manager.
The first report, item 6.1, is a report seeking your endorsement of the Bushfire Community Recovery and Resilience Fund, Phase 2, Stream 2. The projects are listed there. These are programs which improve the social wellbeing in our community.
Thanks for that. In relation to item 6.1 on page 3 of the agenda, are people at home able to see the recommendations, or they can? I move the officer's recommendation, Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2 and Roman numeral 3, and declare that carried. Next item is 7.1.
Thank you, Mr Administrator. This is to, the recommendation is to award the contract for the Waterfall Way guardrail installation and repairs to the SRAM Group as identified in the tender evaluation.
Thank you, and I'm pleased to see these matters are now coming directly to open council, not closed council. In relation to item 7.1 on page 5 of the business paper, I move the officer's recommendation and declare that carried. Next item is item 7.2.
Mr Administrator, this is to adopt the committee's the minutes of the Extraordinary Traffic Advisory Committee meeting held on the 29th of October, and it's in reference to road restrictions on Kempsey Road.
Thank you. In relation to this matter, if I could thank you for organising at short notice, and thank the state authorities and Mr Marshall's representative for coming to Armidale at short notice to address what is a matter of concern to the residents of Lower Creek. And they were given the opportunity to be heard at that meeting, as I understand it. Thank you. In relation to item 7.2 on page 7 of the business paper, I would move the officer's recommendation A, B and C and declare that carried. Item 8.1, Guyra Early Childhood Learning Centre project.
Thank you, Mr Administrator. This is in reference to two contracts. First one is to endorse the engagement of CKDS Architects as the principal design consultant for the Guyra Early Childhood Learning project, and B, endorse the engagement of Sunwest Constructions to carry out refurbishment works to the rear of 2 offices of the existing Armidale Regional Council Guyra Administration Building to facilitate an alternative study centre location.
In relation to this matter, there was a bigger report for this at the last meeting and a call for another report at the November meeting. Could I suggest in the future that there's reference to why these matters are coming before council, so a resident can just read the minutes and get a flow on? so that they haven't got to second guess what's going on. I've got a question in relation to the GIRA administration building. Are these now unused offices that will be put to a recycled use?
Yeah, one is a storage room, and the other is an office that we did refurbish a little while back in anticipation of having a rural financial counselling service, which did not proceed. Yeah, at the moment they're vacant and available for the University of New England Study Centre.
And so they're within the building that was the old GIRA Shire Council chambers.
Yep, it is. It requires quite a bit of work. A lot of the work is to make it disabled access and disabled amenities.
Thank you. In relation to this matter, I would change the recommendation slightly because I don't want the council to be committed to the GIRA Early Education Learning Centre project until the matters that I originally asked for in relation to funding and timeline are more appropriately addressed. But at the same time, I understand the constraints of getting those final costings without the professional advice being available. So I would move in relation to this matter, item 8.1 on page 9 of the business paper, that Council A note that this report partially responds to Council's decision to defer the matter at its last meeting, and that in all likelihood there will be two options presented for Council's consideration for the project, and further information in this regard, together with financing and timeline, is to be presented to the November meeting. B, endorse the engagements of CKDS Architects as the principal design consultant for the GIRA Early Childhood Learning Centre project, subject to the Acting General Manager being a delegated authority to finalise the scope of designs and professional costings. And C, endorse the engagement of SunWest Constructions to carry out refurbishment works to the rear two offices of the existing Armidale Regional Council GIRA Administration Building to facilitate an alternative study centre location. And I would declare that carried. Is there any further business? Accordingly, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.